Hello, if you remember me. I've been a bit MIA for a little bit. I do apologize. My name is Newbie. I consider myself an old lady at heart with way too many hobbies, hence why I've started talking about them on the internet. I do a lot of reading, writing, crochet, sewing. When it goes well, the sewing's not going well. And all kinds of like painting, drawing, bunch of stuff. And I thought it was about time that I say hello, that I come back and give you some updates about what's been going on. I've been doing quite a bit of writing this week. In my last writing vlog, it's been a bit since then, I spoke a lot about a short story that I was, resurrecting from my old college days, which I don't like to think about, but the story had potential. It still has potential. It is unfinished. I worked on it and I was just not loving it. I like the idea of it, but I feel like I might have missed my moment for that story, or that I don't care about it as much, because to recap what I said in my first writing vlog about this story, it was about an old lady who thinks that her husband has been turned into a plate, so she takes him to a pawn shop to have him appraised. Cool idea. I just couldn't get the story right, or the way I wanted it to. But it was from an old college assignment where we had to just prove that we were writing something in that week. It was a weekly assignment, and I didn't really do anything with it then, and still haven't done much with it now. But it is on the back burner. I've set it aside. I worked on it for months, and it really just burned me out and made me hate writing, and I don't want to hate writing. I want to enjoy it. So in that vlog, I also mentioned another story I was thinking about revisiting. And to clarify why I'm revisiting stories, it's been about 2 years since I've really written anything. It's been about 2 years since I was out of college. College really burned me out. It was not a fun time. So I'm trying to get back into writing very slowly, try and start with edits on old stories that I have a huge backlog of, or just kind of reading over my old writing, just becoming refamiliar with my writing voice, which is something I didn't think I would lose. I would lose the verbiage for, that I would lose how to write that way, how to speak that way, like communicate what I need to say, if that makes sense. I've lost my touch, and I don't want to lose my touch. So I'm getting back into everything very slowly. And I had mentioned another story I was thinking about coming back to. It's an older one. I also wrote it in college, early on in my college years. And it's about, to not spoil, it's about a family who wrestles with the idea of putting a leash on their son, but also deals with, minor spoiler, I don't know if I want this to be a spoiler in the story or not, but minor spoiler, deals with putting leashes on children, but also the idea of people who see their pets as children. So, spoiler alert, it's a dog, and the people are freaking out about having to put a leash on their dog because they see it as their child. Okay, that's what it's about. But I'd like to think it's a lot more than that. And I've been working on this story on and off this week very consistently. It's the most consistent I've written in years, really. The story is currently in draft 5. I had a version on the computer that I had edited, I don't even know when, a couple years ago, and all it is just red, where I've been cutting everything from the story. It's way too long. As is common with the stories I wrote a couple years ago, I would consider myself a severe overwriter. I write too much. I get too into the details. Not that I'm saying the same thing over and over, which I feel a lot of overwriters do. They just kind of find the same way to say the same exact thing. Like, he kicked the ball, or his foot moved ever so slowly towards the spherical object on the floor, and wrenching back, he thought about the movements it would take to have the ball roll across the room. Something stupid like that. Don't take that as an example. That's really bad. Anyway, I've severely overwritten this story. I get very precious about all my little details, all the scenes I come up with to add into it. I actually workshopped this story for a class in college, and the professor's biggest critique was, you need to cut this down, and I refused. I wouldn't do it. I didn't believe him that it was too long. It sits at about 8,154 words. It's just under 30 pages, and for a short story, that is too much. And I've gone through the previous computer version for Draft 5 that's been marked up, that I did a lot of cutting. There's like 4 or 5 pages that have been cut, but even then it's only sitting at 7,094 words, and that's still way too long for this story. So I'm having to be very critical about the edits I'm working on for this, to cut it down, to get it to where the idea is there, but I don't need all the fluff, because I love the fluff, but the fluff, all the details, all the overwriting, all the extra scenes that don't really matter, all stuff that's not important to the story, like a lack of conflict, lack of tension, anything that's just bogging the story down, that's making it drag, way too many conversations. I'm a very dialogue heavy writer, but also just kind of monologue heavy, I would say. A lot of it's just not important. It starts off at a grocery store, and the father we see is in the dog aisle, the dog toys, dog food, and he's looking at leashes. And there's a lot of scenes wrapped up in this opening of different characters we see, that like a woman trying to like steal money from him in a way, as a way of I don't know how I want to say this, a woman trying to take money from him to fund her drug habit, and also a mom a couple aisles over wrestling with her son who really wants a sugary kind of cereal, but she's not allowing it. And then this random old man coming up with his dog and, I don't know, having a conversation with the main character. There's a lot going on in the opening scene that doesn't really even need to be there. I've got 4 different scenarios going on in the opening scene, and 2 of them could easily be cut out. I'm really partial to one of them. It's my favorite. It's a scene where a mom and a little boy are wrestling over a sugary cereal, and he is hell-bent on getting it, and she will not allow it. But just the whole idea of seeing their dialogue play out, and the little kid laying on the floor with the Fruit Loops. I don't want to let it go, and I'm keeping that. But then there was a whole conversation later in the opening scene where an old man comes up with his dog, like an old country kind of man, and he's just talking about like children and raising them to not be spoiled and random things like that. It's a whole opening that sets up the image of a story centered around children, and parenting, how best to raise them, like the hard decisions you have to make sometimes. I guess me as a single lady in my early 20s with no kids wants to write a story about parenthood, but also dealing with the idea of people, once again, who see their animals as children and then have to wrestle with how to parent them. I thought it was interesting. It's a little more interesting than that. I'm just bad at explaining because I don't want to spoil or give away too much. Anyway, I've been working on this. I've been working on cutting it down. I printed out a version of it. Let me show you. Printed out a version here that I've been working on. I've done some cuts. This is the printed out version of what I had on the computer. And as you can see, I'm going to try and zoom back so you can't read terribly much. I think it's pretty small, so you shouldn't be able to. Not that I don't want you to, it's just I like to keep things secret. But you can see in the computer version, this was that cut and edit I did a while ago. And all you're seeing is pretty much red, but after about page 13, it sort of cuts off because I didn't get much further than that with the computer edit. But here on paper, I've just been doing so many little notes and edits, and whole scenes have been cut, and I've just been trying to figure out this story. I've not done a full read-through of it quite yet, but I'm still working on it. I think I'm on page, well, if I can find it. Oh, I'm on page 21. It's just after a dentist scene that I think I'm going to have to cut, even though I really like it. They, I guess since I'm gonna cut it, I can spoil it a little bit. They take the dog the dog's name is Brian. They take that they see as their child. They take him to the dentist after an incident where he ate dog food at a family friend's house, and the next day he started acting like his teeth hurt because I guess he's not used to having dog food. Once again, they see it as their kid, so of course they're not going to feed him dog food. And so they take him to the dentist and they get thrown out of the dentist because they think they're crazy, essentially. But I love that scene so much. And I hate that I'm having to cut it, but sometimes you just got to. I'm trying to make really hard decisions, being very strict about my page real estate, and the fact that I want to get this story published. And if I want to get it published, it needs, ideally, if it's going to go in a magazine's not going to publish a whole bunch of stories that are 8,000 words long, 12,000 words, 10,000 words, because they are limited on their page counts. And so if I submit a story that's, like in the previous draft, like well over 8,000 words, it's less likely to get picked, as opposed to if I ideally cut the story down to about 6,000 words, which is around where I would like to have it, even though I'm having to lose a lot of the story, but a lot of it's just fluff anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But I want to give this story a chance. I keep a log of all the stories that I've submitted to magazines. I'm thinking about making another little chatty video about how I submit stories. I've done it for years, not been terribly successful. I have had some poems get published, but as far as submitting stories, I use Submittable. It's very user-friendly. I'll do a walkthrough on it later probably, in case anyone's curious. But on it, I always keep a log. I keep like snapshots of all my rejections just to kind of show where I've submitted stories to, who's rejected it, maybe why, if they even give reasons, which they usually don't, which is fine. I'm sure they get a million of them, so they can't give everyone a reason as to why the story isn't suited for them. But I keep a list of places I've submitted a story, how many times it's been submitted, who's rejected it, who's accepted it. And I submitted this story 13 times. It got 13 rejections. And as I'm going back through my read-through on paper, I almost feel mortified that I submitted it anywhere. It's not good. The beginning's good. The beginning's good. I like the beginning. The middle's not good. And I haven't read the end properly to know if the end was good or not, but I know the middle is just so bogged down. And even in the beginning where I cut those 4 pages where I showed you on the computer, it's all just red, where I cut all that, I doubt they even read past it. I would not have if I was like a reader for a magazine, which I would love to do, but I would not have. I would have rejected it after the first page, probably. The first page is solid. After that, to about page, oh, when does the beginning stop? So to give an idea of how much fluff there is, the beginning scene is page 1 through 10. The story's 30 pages long, and the beginning is 1 through 10. And there's a good 4 or 5 other scenes after that. But the beginning's just fluff. It's just extra dialogue, like with the old man and the dog. I cut him. I didn't need him to really sell the idea that it's about parenthood and the hard decisions you have to make for your children. And being strict and not spoiling like the lady with the cereal did to her spoiled rotten son. Oh, but it's a lot of hard decisions, and I feel like it's sometimes best to make those hard decisions for the betterment of the story, to try and give some, what do you say, some good, not some good news on all this, but some good motivation for myself to look back on. Cut the bits that don't make sense, cut the bits that don't really add to the story. Even if you like the scene, you can save them and you can put them in somewhere else. You can have it just for yourself. Not everybody has to read the 10-page long dialogue of an old man ranting. Even though you like it, it may not suit the story best, and that's something I'm really wrestling with. But I also feel like taking time away from a story really helps you give perspective, really helps give you perspective on the story in general, on your writing style, because me coming back after 2 years of not writing hardly at all, maybe a couple poems here and there, But me taking that time off and rediscovering my stories, which I loved at the beginning, it's as soon as I read it, I was like immediately like, this is my writing style. This is how I want to write. Minus the fluff. Again, minus the fluff. But I've had a good week this week. I've been more consistent than I've ever been with my writing in the past while. And I've been making some good decisions, I feel, with my stories. I feel like I've got a better eye and a more critical eye for story, or at least for my own writing, and how best to tell the stories I want to tell, because I really want to get some things published. I want my writing to be read. I want it to be seen. I don't want it to just sit on my computer piling up rejections because I'm being too sentimental about parts of the story that don't add any value. And that's been my biggest lesson this week as I'm working on the story. I've got a lot of plans for other scenes, like the dentist scene, that I'm probably gonna have to cut, even though I love it. And it reflects in the beginning with the mom and the son wrestling over the cereal, because she doesn't let him have the sugary cereal because they just went to the dentist and he had a cavity. So then I had a dentist scene later in the story where they took the dog and got kicked out because they were crazy, or seen to be crazy by the people. That's the whole point. That was the whole reason why I had a dentist scene, is to reflect the beginning. And a lot of my writing is little reflections here and there, especially my poems, where I like to bring in an idea and then further show it later and have scenes all interwoven and interconnected that kind of make a puzzle, but not really a puzzle. They're all just connected. And as much as I hate to say it, it's just not necessary. So, theme this week is cracking down, learning what's necessary, what's not necessary for my writing. Love that I've made time for writing this week. I'm sure I've showed some clips already, but I've been going to different cafes here and there. I went to a little froyo shop in my hometown earlier this week. That was when I first started working on the paper read-through of the story to get an idea of what I want to do with it, because I can't make edits if I don't read it, but I ended up getting way too bogged down with just fiddling with it and tweaking and doing all these little edits while I'm reading it, when I'm supposed to just be reading it to comprehend, to reacquaint myself with the story. But I can't help myself. I'm always tweaking little things here and there. Hence why my writing takes so long, and hence why it's usually 8,000 words, because I keep adding to it. And I added so much. In the little paper edit, oh, I can't be stopped. But anyway, I have rambled something awful today, and I know I've been all over the place. I hope it wasn't too just blah 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 blah, and that some of it made a bit of sense. But basically, working on a different short story, that plate one from I mentioned in my first writing vlog, setting it aside. I can't deal with it right now. I'm just, frankly, I had to come to the terms that I'm just not interested in that idea at this moment. So I'm working on a different story that also, coincidentally, I wrote in college, and I'm trying to get it in tip-top shape so I can start submitting it again, even though I've submitted it a lot before, 13 times, and had zero luck, and rightfully so. It was not the best. It's very drawn out. It's not as concise and condensed as it could be. Not that every story needs to be concise and condensed. I like the long, rambly stories, the ones that have a million scenes that all connect. But as far as short stories and publishing to magazines go, they don't really want that. It takes up a lot of space. Not everyone's interested in it. They want just an interesting story that's in the short amount of word count as possible. Which I'm not going to get too bogged down with the word count, but if the story ends up being around 6,000-7,000 words, I would be happy with that. As long as it's not 8,000, anything over 8, it's got to be cut, because it's way too long and it's not going to get picked up. I assume the next writing vlog will be me typing up the edits and working on draft 6. So thank you for being here and listening to me yap a lot. Hope it made sense. It made sense to me, even though I lost myself in there as well, so I don't blame you if you got confused. Lovely talking to you again. It's been a while. And I hope you have a lovely day or night or whenever you're watching this. Hope your writing goes well. Let me know what you're working on. I'd be super curious. Do you have the same struggles as me where you overwrite everything and you are a yapper as well and you end up rambling way too much? I would love to know. Love to know I'm not alone in that. Anyway, hope your writing's going well and I will talk to you later.